Hi everyone. For this unit, we are going to be talking about perspective. We've been doing some still lives that have had some cubes in them, and I have some here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about creating depth and 1 point and 2 point perspective. So I am going to show you with these boxes really quickly. Some ways to create depth just with diminishing scale before we even talk about perspective. So if you have some subjects like so, sitting all on the same plane, they're going to look pretty flat. But if I pull them back, stagger and overlap them, look how much depth I just created. So then I don't have to rely on value shifts of 0, 30, 50, 70, 100 to make them look like they're receding exclusively. If I pull this one closer, it even feels like there's more space going on and it kind of starts to look like a cityscape. So let me show you one more time. All on the same plane, pretty flat. Overlapping and shifting in space, and then they start to create more of a sense of depth. I'm going to turn that one. No, I won't. Pull this one closer. So you can start to see how these implied diagonals start to create depth. Okay, so in a minute, I'm going to have you do a drawing kind of like this. I'm going to have a picture of these blocks. And I'm going to have you make a little drawing of just these simple boxes. You can work from my drawing or from my photo, but it takes away that fun observation part of it, which is fine. But if you want that extra challenge, if you could set up some popcorn and cereal boxes, then you could make it work. We're going to start with 1 point perspective now. Tomorrow's unit will do 2 point, but what we're seeing in these cubes is called 1 point perspective because the front of the boxes are flat to our picture plane. And so what happens is that the angles on the tops and the side of the boxes all recede back to 1 point in the picture plane. So you're going to do a little test like this in your sketchbook. Not super hard. It requires a little measuring, but I have another little video where the camera is pointing down on the drawing so you can understand it. Okay, so you'll see how to make these in a minute. But on screen with a big sheet of paper, I'm going to show us how to make an imagined hallway because it is kind of the basis for drawing anything that recedes in 1 point perspective from the interior. So I'm going to show you one more box before we start to draw. So here we have a cube. It's a little bigger, but you can see if I lower it that these, oh, and it's flat to you, not at an angle. That's 2 point. We'll get to 2 point. It's flat to you, but as I lower it in the picture plane and I lower it on from your eye level, you can see that this gets bigger. So watch it from the bottom and see as it moves up, it's going to become a horizontal line, right? So I'm going to drop it again and it's going to become a trapezoid, and that trapezoid is going to get bigger. See how that's working? Cool, right? So those are the cubes we just saw. But we're going to try and draw it from the inside. And we're going to act like we're going to draw an imaginary hallway. If we had been in the face-to-face studio, we would be actually drawing the hallway, but we're going to modify for online. And you could imagine that this line, this line, this line, and this line is the lines that create the floor, the walls, the ceiling, and the back of the hallway. So our goal here when we start drawing is I'm gonna draw this back farthest plane first. So here we go. This is just invented and make believe. I'm doing it on a bigger sheet of 18 by 24 paper so you can see it, but you can do this on your mixed media board or 11 by 14 if you want a little more space. You should have enough of it to get through the end of the semester, or if you would rather, you can do it in your sketchbook. Either way is fine. Okay, so I have a reading that coincides with this, and it talks about starting with your fixed position and finding a constant to measure on. So I'm gonna try this in graphite, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna do it in marker. Make sure you guys can see this. Yes, okay. So I am gonna start with a little dot. This is called, oh yeah, I'm using the marker. Sorry. You see that? Yeah. Okay, so this is our vanishing point, and our vanishing point sits on what we call our eye level. So if I were drawing a hallway, I would act like I have a wire coming out from my eyes that would shoot straight out into space, and wherever that back wall was and my eyes hit, that's the vanishing point that sits on the eye level. And if we were outside or even inside, they call it the horizon line. Okay, so I'm gonna act like I'm drawing this back wall of this hallway. So I'm gonna start with all verticals and horizontals. This drawing is only gonna have vertical, horizontal, and diagonal lines that are on a pinwheel, which I will explain. Okay, so that's the back of our hall. And from this vanishing point, I'm going to draw diagonals through each point of the cube. I'm not going to draw up to the line just because it will look more like a hallway if I do it this way. So I line the vanishing point up and pull these edges off. And so now we have the inside of the box, the floor, the side walls, the back of the hall, and the ceiling. I'm going to draw in a little door just to kind of make it look like a hallway. Draw a little line through it. Looks like a door. There we go. And the vanishing point is still there. So the trick here is that from this vanishing point, every single diagonal in this picture plane has to recede to this point, essentially making a pinwheel as those diagonals spin around the picture plane. So this would be the top of a door. This would be the top of the lockers. This could be the floor tiles that are checker patterned. This would be the lights up above, which I'll show you in just a second. So, okay, here we go. Let's start with acting like we're creating a checkered floor. So again, coming from the vanishing point, if I were working from direct observation, I would be measuring and kind of figuring out with my sighting lines where some of these lines would go. I'm just kind of making it up. So you can start to see how, because of that vanishing point, it looks like things are receding in space. So here's the trick. I'm going to show you something with a cube again really quickly. This is called foreshortening, and it is all steeped in this 1 point perspective information, or they go hand in hand. So this cube, if I hold it close to the camera and I measure with my pointer finger and my thumb, I'm gonna hold that measurement and I move the cube back, what's happening to it? It's shrinking, right? It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you almost can't see it as well either, right? I'm gonna bring it back up. It gets brighter, higher contrast, and then we're back up into space. That's foreshortening. It's the same thing if you're drawing a human and you know that my face is about the size of my hand, correct? Like we all can see that, but watch what's about to happen. My face is half the size of my hand, right? That's foreshortening. It's not that any of that information changed size, it's that something's closer to you and something's further away. So that's foreshortening, and that's what's helping us understand how this is starting to come together. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the foreshortening and lay in a couple floor tiles. So what has to happen is that this tile has to be bigger than the next one. They get smaller and smaller as they recede back. So I'm gonna do this one right about here. Then the following one has to be smaller, but not only is it the tile itself, but the negative spaces in between. So, well, actually, scratch that. I'll show you that in the ceiling. So this next one has to be a little lower. So it's shorter, right? I'll measure it with my pencil. You'd think we have this ruler for measuring, but we actually just have it for a straight edge. So if this is the front size, the next one gets smaller, and then it has to get smaller yet again. So I'm gonna drop it down a little more. I'll drop it down a little more. A little more. Even smaller yet. I'm trying to make them a little lighter. It's a little harder in marker, and I don't think you can see it on here, but we're going to talk about atmospheric perspective as we move forward. And that essentially is saying that as you recede in space, things get lighter in contrast. Oops, I put those in the wrong plane. Oh well. So they move back and back and back, and then they recede. So let's try it on the ceiling. We're gonna act like this is our lights. These are our lights. So I'll say this too about your vanishing point, because it's not quite in the center of this square. That means that I'm sitting more over here instead of in the middle. If I wanted it to be dead on, then I would have put this dot right in the center. Okay, so here we go again. Here comes our ceiling tiles and our light bays. So act like this is a light and this is the negative space in between, a light. Now notice this negative space has to shrink too. So it feels like it's shifting back as it unfolds. So here's the fun part, and I am gonna do it with pencil first, and then I'll mark it out because I'm gonna have to erase some stuff. Okay, so I wanna try and put a door in a hallway that's going off to the side. So again, the only marks in this drawing are verticals, horizontals, and any diagonal has to point to the pinwheel. It has to radiate off. That's it. It can't go in any other direction. So I'm going to draw in the top of a hallway here. Maybe I'll do it in marker. Oh yeah, you can see that. And I'm going to drop down a vertical, and I'm making sure it's parallel to the edge of my picture plane. Again, not crooked, it has to be parallel to the edges. I'm gonna remark this in marker. So it's starting to look like there might be a doorway there. So I'm gonna take a vertical, or take a horizontal, and I'm gonna bring it in just a little bit, and this is where it's gonna look like it's a recess. I'm gonna drop a vertical. And then I line up that edge with the dot. And now it looks like it recedes and drops back in space. So all you're using are verticals, horizontals, and the diagonals that fit on the pinwheel. I'll do one more on the other side. I might have to make that taller, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll make this other one taller. So the beginnings of a door, and then I'm gonna do that thing that I did here. I'm gonna drop in a little bit of a horizontal, drop down another vertical on it, and then continue off of my point. And now it looks like it's a door that's starting to recede in space. Okay, so after this video, I want you to try and do one of these, just a make-believe hallway, just like this. And you can do it on, like I said, your sketchbook or your mixed media board if you want a little more space. You're also gonna see a little video of me making, well, this is the video for this one. So you'll make one of these. Then you'll see me doing a little video making these, and I want you to copy the information. I'll have a photo of the cube so you can see it. And these are just working drawings. We'll do some working drawings again tomorrow in the next unit for 2-point perspective, and then we'll actually make a rendering and pull it all together. Okay, so I'm excited to see what you guys are making, and we will see you soon. Okay, bye.